How you doing, kids? It's the MMA Roundtable, episode 42, February 4th, 2014, and we got two cards to break down because we weren't around here last week. We got UFC on Fox 10. That was Benson Henderson versus Josh Thompson. Going to talk a little bit about that card and a little bit about this past Saturday's card, UFC 169. Nothing to break down, a little news as always. Let's do it. And we do really appreciate you listening to the show. Like I said, it's February 4th. I'm here in Denver, Colorado, watching the snow fall sideways in front of my window. And I'm joined by three men I can honestly call three things. One, very, very smart when it comes to mixed martial arts. Two, expert orators, especially our boy with the voice of velvet, Ray Thompson. And third, and most of all, they're all friends of mine, and I'm glad to be doing it with them. We do this show, we try and do it on Tuesday afternoons, and I won't waste any more time blabbering. I'll start off with our two buddies across the pond, Ray and Jay. Ray, you posted actually a picture on Facebook that shows you've lost a ton of weight in the last 15 weeks. Aside from that, or even including that, how are things going over in the UK, buddy?
Yeah, things are going good. I wanted to lose some weight, so I signed up to take part in a charity mixed martial arts fight. I'm good at talking the talk, so I thought I'd give myself a go at walking the walk. I gave myself 20 weeks to lose 70 pounds. So far, I'm 15 weeks in, and I've lost 54 pounds. So I'm on target to do that. But yeah, I thought some people had asked for pictures, so I thought I'd post up not really a before and after because I'm still going through it, but a before and during. And you can to look at the pictures, even for me to look at it, it's crazy. You can see such a big difference. So that was good. I've done some good interviews as well. I've been focusing on post-fight interviews. So this week, I've just published interviews with a couple of winners off UFC 169. I spoke to Neil Magny and Aloy Quinta. And I also spoke to quite a few winners off the previous card, the UFC on Fox card. I managed to get interviews with Alex Caceres, or Bruce Leroy, we'll call him, because he was obviously one of the stars of the night with his two bonuses. So that was really interesting to speak to him. And I spoke to a couple of other guys. Well, I spoke to George Sullivan, who had a pretty good win on his debut as well. But yeah, things are going good. I've got no complaints.
Definitely, and we'll keep it over in the UK for my Emma Watson loving friend Jay. How the hell are you?
I'm good. I made a big change last week when we weren't on the round table, and I changed my Twitter handle. It is no longer J_. It is the J Jeans. Just nice and simple. At the J Jeans, but whatever. So yeah, tweet me, guys. Follow me, whatever. I think Patrick's just become the first guy to tweet my new handle. So fair play, Patrick. But yeah, everything's going good with me.
So it's J-A-Y. It isn't just the letter J now. So THEJAYJEANS.
Yeah, the J Jeans got the whole thing going on.
Hell yeah! Follow him at the J Jeans, and Jay just brought him up a second ago. He is the glue that holds us together. Sorry, I all of a sudden lost all my focus watching a car slide down a hill outside my window. But Sweet Pappy Jones coming from the beautiful area of Palmdale, California. Follow him on Twitter at Sweet Pappy Jones. How the hell are you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. It's a lovely Tuesday out here. Nice, sunny, and breezy. Everything's looking beautiful. I'm following everybody, MMA Mental, the J Jeans, the word on the streets, C. Lowenstein for our boy Chris, Jake at the MMA Podcast, and I'm just loving life, getting ready to break down these fights, and getting ready to talk shop.
Yeah, I thought having the window open would, be a little bit better. I could gaze out and look at it snowing, but I realized there's an apartment complex across the street with a pretty steep incline to get into the parking lot, and I realize now that the entire show I'm just going to be watching cars try and drive up it and lose traction and ending up sliding back down. So maybe that was a horrible idea, but let's get into it. Like I said, we're going to start off with UFC on Fox 10, Benson versus Thompson. The main event definitely left a lot of us wanting more. I know, I can't call it a robbery when a fighter only in my eyes easily wins a few rounds. For instance, at UFC 167, I thought Johnny Hendricks won, but I was a little tentative to call it a robbery because it wasn't that much of a one-sided beatdown. I guess the main event in this can sort of go in the same category. Most people, pretty much everyone, thought Thompson won, but even though he wasn't given the decision, I'm a little cautious to call it a robbery because it was a close fight. But let's save the main event and all that controversy for when we get to the actual fight. And it was a little while back, but what did you think of Henderson versus Thompson? We also had Cerrone, Miocic, and Jeremy Stevens win on the main card. Ray, what did you think of the card as a whole?
I thought it was an okay card. There was some really high spots on the card as a whole. I mean, Bruce Leroy looked and Sergio Pettis put on a fantastic fight. Cerrone looked great. The main event was a little bit disappointing. Darren Cruikshank looked amazing. And we all thought Walt Harris was going to smash Nikita Krylov. I mean, I think Jay's words were it's going to be a one-sided beatdown, and it literally wasn't. So that was quite funny as well.
Yeah, I thought this card was good. I mean, heck, compared to what a lot of people think of UFC 169, I'm sure a lot of people would take cards like UFC on Fox 10 all day. I mean, 3 TKOs, at least starting from head kicks, if not directly the result of. But I thought it was a good showing all the way around.
Yeah, Ray nailed it on the head, man. I thought I was fully expecting a beatdown of the year in that fight, and Nikita came out not afraid of anything. Overall, yeah, it was a pretty good card. The undercard, as Ray mentioned, Pettis versus Casey Rios, definitely probably stole the entire show. You also had Wineland, who he is a reminder that he is in the top 10, if not top 5 of that division. And yeah, Cruikshank with the nice wheel kick. I mean, we always like a finish like that, and it's good to see some finishes because this week we didn't see that many.
Definitely, yeah. And let's get on to the fights themselves. I'm looking at the prelims here. We actually had 7 prelim fights. It was a little unbalanced as we only had one fight on the UFC Fight Pass prelim card, and it lasted 25 seconds. Maybe the biggest underdog of the whole night, Nikita Krylov defeating Walt Harris via head kick and punches 25 seconds into the match. Then we had 6 cards on the Fox Sports 1 prelims. George Sullivan upsetting Mike Biggie Rhodes via unanimous decision at welterweight, and the lightweights Darren Cruikshank tagging Mike Rio with a wheel kick and finishing it up with punches. And then the last 4 fights were all bantamweight fights. Hugo Viana and Chico Camus defeating Junior Hernandez and Yautzin Meza via unanimous decision, respectively. Eddie Wineland TKOing Yves Jabois in the second round. And like we mentioned, Alex Caceres with the late rear naked choke on Sergio Pettis with only 21 seconds remaining in the match. Which fight stood out to you? For me, Cruikshank. I mean, Cruikshank, a guy, I think the only guy we've had on the show twice. Very, very, very likable character. So personally, I was really stoked to see him get the win. See Chico Camus win in Chicago, where he's from, and obviously Wineland and Bruce Leroy both impressed too. Ray, anything stand out to you from these 7 fights?
Yeah, the standout for me, I mean, Darren Cruikshank was amazing. I don't think I've ever seen combinations like that, from the Superman punch to the head kick, and his combinations were just unbelievable. And he looked amazing in that fight. But the star of the prelims was Bruce Leroy and Sergio Pettis. I mean, that fight was just unbelievable, back and forth. It was absolutely fantastic. And let's not forget, it looked like Sergio was going to win that fight with like 20 odd seconds to go. But Bruce Leroy, he's there all the time. He shows us why we like watching him fight because he fights till the finish. And he had an opportunity to take Sergio's back. He sunk in the choke. Sergio didn't show any defense at all to that choke. He didn't even put his chin down. And I spoke to Bruce Leroy, and that they were Bruce Leroy's words. He didn't even put his chin down to try and block it, and the choke was on full. And obviously Sergio Pettis got defeated. The other one that kind of stood out to me, but for the wrong reasons, was George Sullivan and Mike Rhodes. And Patrick and Jay will know this, of course. I've had a lot to do with Mike Rhodes in the build-up, and I was really looking forward to seeing him get his opportunity in the UFC. And I know he took the fight on short notice, but I was so gutted to see him lose. When you interact with someone on quite a regular basis, it's almost like you're in there with them, as daft as that sounds. So I was disappointed to see him lose, especially after he won the second round and he looked good, and then he just didn't seem to let go. Sullivan had the power, Rhodes had the technique, but it was like he was waiting to react to Sullivan, but then when Sullivan was landing, he wasn't reacting, and he just didn't push the pace enough, and of course he lost. Every judge scored it the same, 29-28, and it was the right decision, but I was gutted to see Rhodes lose.
Yeah, Rhodes going into that fight, I believe, at least somewhat of a favorite. Patrick, anything stand out to you from those prelims?
Yeah, it was. Well, I'd have to concur with Ray. It was certainly heartbreaking to watch Biggie drop his UFC debut. We always like to support Biggie and the guys over at Rufus Sport. They've always been good with MMA Mental and the MMA podcast as well. And it looked like he was there. Maybe it was Octagon jitters. I definitely believe Mike Rhodes had all the talent to win that fight. But yeah, just seemed to have a little tough time pulling the trigger. But hey, that's all right. I'm sure he'll grow. He's a young fighter and young in the sport of mixed martial arts. So that's all right. But definitely love the Eddie Wineland versus Yves Jabouin fight. That was a great rebound fight for Eddie Wineland against a really tough fighter in Jabouin. I mean, it was not an easy one either. They were swinging them things, and Eddie he just showed a really good display of power and technique, and made a good statement for his way back to the title. And yeah, of course, the Sergio Pettis Alex Caceres fight, that was very excellent. I had picked Caceres to win that fight, so of course I was glad just to be proven right in that one. But overall, very, very solid prelims.
J. Jeans.
Yeah, man, I enjoyed the prelims. I think I enjoyed the majority of the card. The one thing that stood out for me was probably it's got to be the Viana Hernandez fight. Now, I'm not in a good way. I was very unimpressed with Hugo Viana. He was two rounds up, and in the third round, I can't remember what the statistics were, but he felt like he threw nothing. He was running away. I don't care who you are, how good you are. If you're in a third round, you got to try and at least, even if you're 2 rounds up, you got to do something. This guy's a black belt in Taekwondo. He's got the good jiu-jitsu game and all this. Yet he has only scored one finish in his 9-fight career now. And for the UFC to be signing a guy like that, like, I don't know what's going on. I can't get behind this guy at all. I don't know where he goes in the division, but I hope they cut him. I can't stand guys who don't try anything to go for the finish. That fight just pissed me off.
Yeah, let's move on to the main card. Speaking of fights that pissed you off, I don't know if Stevens versus Elkins pissed me off necessarily, but I was really disappointed in Elkins just coming out so flat. And there are definitely fights where a fighter will get dominated, and it isn't necessarily because he had a quote-unquote bad fight, but the other fighter just outpaced him. I don't know what was up with Darren Elkins here. He may have been super sick. I'm not sure. But, I mean, he's had good fights. He beat Tia Trang Zong, Diego Brandao, Steven Seiler, Hatsu Hiyoki in his last fight in late 2013. But he went up against Jeremy Stevens, and just everything from his aggression to his footwork to his head movement I mean, he was obviously the worst fighter. I don't know who gave it a 29-28, but I scored a 30-27 with the other two judges. And I don't want to take anything away from Jeremy Stephens, because Jeremy Stephens is a motherfucker. Actually, I think recently in a interview, it was an Ask Me Anything on Reddit with Joe Lauzon, and someone asked him who hits harder than anyone, who is the hardest hitter of all of his people he has fought, and he said Jeremy Stephens. Stephens now on a 3-fight winning streak, beat Estevan Payon, Hani Jason, and now Darren Elkins. But Elkins, in my eyes, just came out looking so pathetically flat. Patrick, what'd you think of the fight that led off the main card on Fox, Stephens Elkins?
I enjoyed it thoroughly. It played out fairly similarly to how I thought it would. Jeremy Stephens, like you said, he's a fucking beast at 145 pounds. He's having a career resurgence. I like to liken to what Robbie Lawler is having. I consider them kind of similarly styled fighters, just separated by about 30 or so pounds. But it was just a very good showing. I mean, he's got the power. He's got the grappling ability. And I think this is just the perfect weight class for him. And I mean, I think as far as Darren Elkins was concerned, perhaps there's just a little psychological component coming into that, because when you look at what Jeremy Stephens had done in his previous fight against Hani Jason, that's got to be a little intimidating. And of course, you think about, well, hell, look at how Chad Mendes knocked out Darren Elkins. That's definitely got to make you play a little more conservative. And again, just that's one of those cases, a guy just never even getting a chance to get off because you're just trying not to get destroyed. But yeah, I thought it was great. And man, I'm hoping to see Jeremy Stephens get that title shot at some point here, be it against Aldo or an interim champ, whatever they end up doing.
Yeah, Stephens working his way up the featherweight ranks with those 3 straight wins. Jay, what did you think of Elkins versus Stephens?
I think you guys have nailed.
Oh, sorry, Jay, you haven't.
No, I'm after Patrick these days. Jake's messing shit up.
Hell yeah.
I think Jake is right that Elkins really did look like a shadow of his former self, and clearly he's not talking right, because if Jeremy Stephens punches the hardest, then Chad Mendes punched him so hard he didn't know, he couldn't even remember how hard it hurts. There's clearly something's wrong with Elkins there. Yeah, I think Elkins came in with a poor game plan as well. Yeah, we saw he has that one-punch knockout power that we saw in the Ronnie Jason fight, but what was he doing? He's standing with him. Like, I don't know. He clearly didn't have a wrestling-based camp. He worked so hard on the defense of the strikes that he forgot all about the offense and the takedowns and holding him down. He didn't look like anything that we've seen him do before. But yeah, Jeremy Stephens is 27 years old and he's got a lot of potential. It'll be interesting to see who he goes up against next. I think it has to be either one of the Eric Koch or Dustin Poirier. I could understand those matches.
Yeah, I weren't really so annoyed with Elkins. I just think Stephens stepped his game up and he looked that good. His takedown defense looked good, and obviously on the feet, Jeremy Stephens is an absolute beast. Something Jay mentioned there. He mentioned about Eric Koch. Eric Koch's at lightweight now. He's fighting at lightweight on the next event, so I don't think he'll be at featherweight anymore. I don't know whether it's a good move for him or not, but he's moved up to lightweight. I tell you what I'd like to see. I mean, obviously there's no. Again, it's all chock-a-block at the top of the division, of course. Chad Mendes is absolutely on fire, so whether they're going to give him the next shot or not, I don't know. But I'd like to see Jeremy Stephens versus Cub Swanson, with the winner of that getting a title shot. I think that would be such a great fight, because I think they're quite possibly, outside, of course, of Aldo and Mendes, probably 2 of the best strikers in the featherweight division at the moment. I mean, the run Stephens has been on is absolutely ridiculous. And I couldn't believe it when they said he was 27, because he's been around for such a long time. But 27, that's frightening. He's got so much potential at featherweight, and he's looking like an absolute beast.
Yeah, Jeremy Stevens, only 27 and already has 32 fights under his belt there in the lightweight and featherweight division. We will move on. Donald Cerrone taking on Adriano Martins, and Donald Cerrone, most people thought he would win just based off Cerrone having almost a full career of fighting elite opponents, and his opponent sort of stepping into the UFC, taking this step up in opponents for the first time in his career. Donald Cerrone winning in the first round via head kick, is now the number 11th ranked lightweight in the UFC. I actually posed the question in the run sheet of who should Donald Cerrone fight next, but he's already got an announced opponent. He's going to be facing. I think I mixed fighting and facing there. He's going to be fighting Edson Barboza on April 19th at UFC on Fox 11 in Orlando, Florida. So we know what's next for Donald Cerrone. But what did you think of this fight? He had a lot of colorful comments afterwards, saying that Cole Miller was the turd the UFC needs to flush, saying that his bonuses were already gone, saying that he actually wants to fight 6 times, which now that his second fight is in April, that's probably a little bit doubtful. But what did you think of the fight, Cerrone versus Adriano Martins? I'll throw it to you first, Jay.
Donald Cerrone, yeah. What can you say when he fights anybody who hasn't got a lot of named recognition? He takes it to another level with them, and that's really what he did here. I mean, he's had a few weird fights in the past. I mean, the KJ Noons fight, also the Wagner Rocha, where he wasn't really. The finish was never obvious to him, so he didn't push it. But in this fight, I think he's going back to the old days where he's looking to finish every fight and do it as violently as possible. And that Edson Barboza fight, that is insane matchmaking. We're in for an epic fight.
For me, with Donald Cerrone, it wasn't the fact that he beat Adriano Martins. I think we all expect him to beat Martins, but I've used this phrase before. I've said it 100 times. I'll probably say it 100 times again in the future. It's not who you beat; it's how you beat them, and we've seen that with the fight we're going to talk about in a little bit. But Cerrone beat Martins, yeah, blah blah. Who cares? He beat Martins, but it wasn't the fact he beat him; it was the fact he beat him with such a devastating head kick, and the guy was just out cold. And like Jay said, who can't not be excited for Donald Cerrone versus Edson Barboza? I mean, the way they both strike, they're so unique at what they do, and they're so good at what they do. You know, Edson Barboza's probably got some of the best leg kicks in the division, probably outside of Pettis, because Pettis is an absolute beast. I mean, Cerrone versus Barboza, that is just, gosh, I mean, that's just such an exciting fight to look forward to. I personally, April can't come soon enough for that fight, especially after the event we've just had. It could be nice to have some good fights. But Cerrone versus Barboza is definitely well up for that fight. That's going to be amazing.
P-Money?
Cerrone versus Barboza. This is the first I'm hearing of that. That is going to be insane. Crazy technical Muay Thai battle. Both good on the ground. That'll just be insane. Don Cerrone, I mean, I'll tell you too, Adriano Martins, he actually made his debut against Darren Cruikshank in the UFC, and he submitted him in the second round. So I wasn't sleeping on him. Because Darren Cruikshank, as we saw on the same card, he's a fucking badass. So I said, okay, if he could do that to old Cruikshank, who's a striking wizard, maybe he's got something for Cerrone, who, for a little bit there, I mean, the way Pettis dismantled him, he'd had more impressive showings as of late, but he came out and it was classic Cowboy. I mean, that was amazing. In fact, that was better than classic Cowboy, because usually Cowboy, he'll drop you and then he'll submit you in kind of a Diaz-like fashion. But this time, I mean, there wasn't even the chance. That was just shin bone straight to the jaw, shutting down the brain. He just face planted. It was almost a Ric Flair style face flop. It was a beautiful performance. So, yeah, loved it.
Word up. We'll briskly move on to the next fight, a co-main event war between Stipe Miocic and Gabriel Gonzaga. Gabriel breaking his hand early in the first round. I actually put up pictures. His hand looked like a club. It was so swollen up. But yeah, Stipe winning the unanimous decision, 30-27, 30-27, 29-28, really put it to Gabe. It was sort of a one-sided fight, and now Stipe is in a weird spot in the UFC's sort of shallow heavyweight division. I think this moves him up into the top 10. As far as who he fights next, that's a big question. You know, you have Dos Santos, who doesn't have an opponent, hasn't fought since he lost to Cain Velasquez in October. Cormier moving down. Bigfoot out for a year. Verdum and Brown going to be fighting in April. Hunt, I believe, had surgery on his hand after that December fight against Bigfoot. Overeem, you have, who recently won at 169. I don't know if that's the most likely next opponent for Stipe. But what did you think of the fight, and who would you like to see Stipe take on next, Ray?
I mean, regardless of whether Gonzaga broke his hand early on or what, the difference in that fight was you know, as well as Miocic's crisp boxing, was the cardio. You know, Gonzaga's shown in the past he struggles in the later rounds. Miocic, we've seen him fight in the past. He'll go for 15 minutes and he'll push the pace. Did it against Nelson. He did it against Gonzaga. Miocic's beating good people, but he needs to face someone who can fight for 3 rounds, because his last 2 opponents he's won and he's looked impressive, but he's not been tested in the later rounds because of their cardio. You know, we all know with Roy Nelson, it's either Nelson round 1 KO or Nelson loses by decision. That's the pattern of all of his fights. For who we'd like to see next, obviously you ran through a few list of names. Before you started listing the names, the first name that jumped in my head was Overeem. You know, they normally like to match up winners versus winners. Overeem's a strange one, because Overeem's still there and still getting interest because of his reputation from what he's done outside the UFC. He hasn't looked great in the UFC. You know, he annihilated Brock Lesnar. The fact he called out Brock Lesnar was ridiculous as well. He annihilated Brock Lesnar, and then he basically gassed hard in his next 2 fights and got knocked out in spectacular fashion against people he was expected to beat. And then he beat Frank Mir, but again, he didn't put Frank Mir away. People thought he would beat Frank Mir away, so he won, but it wasn't an impressive win. I'd like to see Miocic fight over him. I think that would be, for me, that would be an interesting fight.
B-Money? Is Patrick still there?
Oh, sorry about that. I was on mute.
It's all good. I will edit all that shit out in post. Go ahead.
No, my bad. Yeah, Miocic versus Gonzaga. That was a good fight for Miocic. I thought Gonzaga had the heat. I thought he was going to put him away. He's been looking good aside from the Travis Brown fight, or at least he had prior to meeting Miocic in the ring. But Miocic, he showed that Gold Glove boxing. He showed that NCAA pedigree and pretty much just imposed his will throughout the fight. The hands looked good. The grappling looked good. It was a very impressive performance from Stipe. He did have the size advantage in there. And, yeah, it was interesting. As far as what's next, I mean, yeah, heavyweight, I don't know. It just seems so thin these days. Heck, perhaps a Soa Palele. I think he's got 2 wins in a row, so why not?
That's not a bad shout. Hadn't even thought of that one. The basic ones that ran through my head straight away were Big Nog or Mark Hunt. Until recently, we had this Overeem Mir fight, because now they've announced Big Nog's fight Nelson. So the obvious choices for me were Overeem Mir or Mark Hunt, and then you add in that curveball just a second ago with Soa Palele. But I think Soa's probably still got a while to go. I think he'll have to fight a wrestler, maybe Jared Rosholt for now. But I could see Stipe going in there with Mir or Overeem. I mean, yeah, they like to match winners with winners and losers with losers alike. But the Mir fight would be interesting because his back really is. This is it. He's either cut, he's got to retire, or something. This fight with Mir, it's a winnable fight for Mir because Stipe has been known to go through these. It's a guy who isn't going to be able to finish him off. We haven't seen Stipe get that many finishes, and Mir is able. I mean, he dropped Congo and submitted him. That fight interests me a lot. The fight that I still want to see is probably Mark Hunt. I think it's a very winnable match for Mark Hunt. All he's got to do is keep the fight standing. But yeah, any of those three, Hunt, Overeem, or Mir, they make me happy. But why Big Nog is fighting Nelson, I don't know. I still want to see Big Nog versus Struve.
Word up. And let's get to the last fight on the card. Benson Henderson taking on Josh Thompson, winning a split decision, 48-47, 47-48, 49-46. Like I said to start off, I don't know if I can label it a robbery, but it was definitely a head scratcher. I want to say, of the people I was following on Twitter, I want to say maybe one thought Bendo won, 48-47. The rest of the cards I saw, the rest of the judges' cards people put out, which I want to say was 20 or 30 other people, they either had it 48-47 Josh or 49-46 Josh. So it seemed like, because a good amount of people thought Josh won 4-1, another good amount of people thought Josh won 3-2, another person thought Bendo won 3-2. Josh will probably win. Not only did Bendo win, but Sal D'Amato scored it 49-46. He only gave 1 round to Josh while giving 4 rounds to Benson Henderson, which is the exact opposite of what most people thought happened. Personally, I think the 1 round Bendo won was round 3. I thought Josh Thompson clearly won round 1. And won rounds 2, 4, and 5, albeit doing it in a sort of close manner. But yeah, I had it 49-46 Thompson. Hearing Thompson speak at the post-fight presser, which we won't play those comments, but it was really kind of sad because Josh was very, very very emotional, talking about even before the fight. he was thinking about hanging up the gloves and retiring, and losing a shitty decision has got to be the most. I mean, just taking all the wind out of your sails. I think Josh had a pretty long training camp. I believe he had like a 15-week long training camp. Seeing him lose it was definitely kind of crappy to see, along with him being emotional after the fight. But what are your thoughts on the fight? Was it a robbery? Henderson Thompson, Patrick, I'll lead it off with you.
Thank you, Jake. Well, I think the real travesty here was that I forgot to DVR this fight because I was at a buddy's house watching this, and I'll tell you what, at the time, I had Benson Henderson winning this fight. I'm one of the rare few, I suppose, and I don't have the fight to replay here, but I do remember Josh Thompson clearly winning the first round, and from just what I recall, I seem to remember after Thompson hurting his hand, I seem to remember Benson Henderson getting the better of the striking. I don't know, but what really bums me out as well is that on the Fight Pass, apparently I cannot watch the video due to... Yeah, because it was aired on fucking rabbit ears in the USA, on Big Fox. That's the only thing I can think of, because I go and I try and rewatch UFC on Fox 10. I can't.
I actually went back to watch UFC 168 on Fight Pass, and they wanted me to pay him $55.
Really?
Which, that's a whole nother thing because it's a pay-per-view, but I don't know what it is. This is a, we'll probably go deep into it on another show, but the UFC Fight Pass has dropped the ball so severely, whether it's with not encrypting their passwords, whether it's with, the WWE, which I don't really follow. They embarrassed the UFC just weeks after the UFC announces Fight Pass. The WWE announces their own, I believe it was called the WWE Network, and it's I think cheaper than Fight Pass. I believe it's $9.99 a month, and with the $9.99 a month, you get every pay-per-view the company has ever done in the past, going all the way back to the start of the company, and more importantly, it includes every live pay-per-view. So you weren't shelling out $60 for a pay-per-view if you're a committed fan. As long as you pay the $9.99 a month, you'll get it, which, completely kills piracy. And it's Vince McMahon, the guy who sort of, brought up the pay-per-view system. It's him sort of killing it. But, the UFC has dropped the ball very, very, very hard with Fight Pass. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's been a whole situation. But, yeah, back to the fight itself. I mean, hey, I wish I had means to rewatch it because I recall Benson Henderson winning. I don't even recall it being a robbery. So, yeah, I've got no qualms with it. Thought it was a fun fight.
Jay James.
Yeah, it was a fun fight. I just hate the decision. I thought Josh clearly did enough to win the fight. I scored it 40. I can't even remember what I scored. I know I scored the first 2 rounds to Josh. The third one was clearly Benson's. The fourth one was Josh's again, and I think I scored the fifth one a draw. So 3-1-1. It's pathetic. Yes, it was a robbery. I don't know. Sal D'Amato is without doubt probably one of the worst judges of all time. I mean, you look at some of his other ones. He's scoring GSP over Hendricks. He also scored Jackson over Machida, to name a few. I can't remember any others off the top of my head, but Josh Thompson was not happy at all. You could see that in the post-fight presser. He's looking very depressed. I think he thought he won. Of course, as Jake said, the 15-week training camp, probably that's something that nobody should have to endure. It must be hell for him. He went from fighting Pettis to fighting Benson and then getting screwed out of it. I still think he probably should have the title shot, even. I think that's how bad of a decision this was. He took us back in 3 rounds, maybe 4 rounds. Just he beat him. He straight up beat him. It was a robbery, and it sucks to see Josh Thompson retire on that note. Whether he will go through and retire, whether he won't, it's such a bad fight for him, and it's a bad fight for his career. I mean, Benson's been involved in these gift decisions against Melendez and against Edgar, and then Josh Thompson has had the reverse happen to him, where with Gilbert Melendez, where he's lost when it's almost the guy who wins the decisions versus the guy who loses the decision. So on reflection, hindsight is always 20/20, but man, Josh is unlucky, and Benson Henderson's a very lucky dude.
I don't remember the breakdown of each round, but I remember when I watched the fight, I thought after the fight that Benson had won, again mainly due to the grappling. I think if Thompson hadn't broke his hand early on in the fight, it would be a completely different fight, because Benson struggled with Thompson, but in my eyes just did enough. If Thompson without the injured hand would have won that fight. I didn't think it was a great fight. I wouldn't be interested in seeing a rematch after seeing that fight, because it was a hard fight to watch. Benson has these moments where he can be really exciting, but other times he tends to stifle his opponents and he wins by control, if you like. So yeah, I didn't have a problem with the decision. I like the fact that Benson didn't get a title shot, because again, the line I used earlier on, it's not who you beat, it's how you beat them. And Henderson won, but he didn't win impressively. So Dana said, no, you're not having a title shot. I like that, because hopefully that will encourage guys to go out there, and look, even if you don't get the finish, at least look for the finish. Make it so the fans think you're going for it. Prime example, of course, is Johnny Hendricks. Regardless of whether he gets the finish or not, he's exciting to watch. Where Benson sometimes can be a little bit dull to watch. But yeah, I thought it was the right call for that fight. But I'm glad that Benson's not being rewarded for that performance.
He's not. And we're actually going to talk about the future of the lightweight title when we get to the news segment in 1 second. But first and foremost, you know what time it is.
Boom, 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 boom. Now tell me what you gonna do, but it ain't nowhere to run. When judgment comes for you, when judgment comes for you, tell me what you gonna do, but it ain't nowhere to hide. When judgment comes for you, 'cause it's gonna come for you.
That's right, it's time for the Bonehead of the Week, where we break down who was the biggest bonehead in MMA that week. Mine is the Texas State Athletic Commission. The details are still a little fuzzy, but what it sounds like is Jessica I defeated Sarah Kaufman back in Texas months ago. This did not happen anytime recently. Jessica I won, and just recently the news has come down the post that that the fight will be overturned to a no contest. I will not be suspended, but she doesn't get credit for her win. Why? What did she take? Did she take steroids? No. Did she smoke weed? No. She was on blood thinners that a doctor had prescribed her for a car accident she was in. Let's keep in mind, Jessica I also, she's doing a GoFundMe for her dad who has brain cancer or some sort of brain, tumor he needs removed. So she is here trying to raise money for her dad, trying to raise $10,000. And the Texas State Athletic Commission, I don't know if they're just going broke or what, but they reach all the way back to a fight months ago, and they do take money away from Jessica I for taking a doctor-prescribed medicine because she was in a car crash. This is the same Texas State Athletic Commission that recently took half of Henry Cejudo's purse. I don't like it at all. Corrupt government agencies already get me pretty pissed off, but when you're going to start screwing over MMA fighters who don't make that much to begin with, you got to be my bonehead of the week, Texas State Athletic Commission. Jay?
The New Jersey guys have proven the bad reputation wrong again. I mean, I know there's been hundreds of UFC events, absolutely crazy numbers, but yeah, so 2 people were stabbed at UFC 169. I mean, you're watching, it's the martial arts lifestyle. We had back in the old days the guys like Tank Abbott who probably would be involved in things like stabbing, but these days we've got professional athletes who go in there and bow. People in the crowd should be more respectful, understand that. I mean, who fights with knives? Seriously, I can understand if fights break out, but people stabbing, what the hell are you doing, man? I absolutely can't believe people even go around carrying knives. It's pathetic, it's disrespectful for the sport, it gets the sport a bad name. I don't think they really care about the sport, but New Jersey is appalling for this shit. I mean, it happened last time, UFC Jones versus Sonnen, a fight broke out at some stage. New Jersey is appalling for this, so I don't know whether my bonehead is New Jersey as a venue sorting their security out, or whether it's the people doing the stabbing. Whatever, that is messed up.
Just everyone in the state of New Jersey, right?
Apparently, yeah, that's my bonehead.
My bonehead is the judges at UFC 169. There was 3 decisions or scores that had me baffled, and they all deserve hanging for it. First, of course, was the Ally Quinter fight, where one judge scored the fight 28-27. I don't think I've ever seen a 28-27. I had to get someone to. I couldn't work it out in my head what it was, and it was 2 10-8 to 10-8 each, and then a 10-9. It was just ridiculous. I mean, the fight was close. It went the right way, but 28-27 is a ridiculous score. And then we saw Tom Kong Watson robbed against Catone, who did nothing but literally take him down, lie on him. And every time he took him down, Watson got back to his feet, and then he pummeled him with his punches. I mean, don't get me wrong, Watson didn't look great in that fight, but Watson won that fight. And then the biggest robbery of the night, a fighter I don't like or don't care for. He's such a boring fighter. I never look forward to John McDessie. I think I've only ever seen him fight exciting once, just when he won with that spinning punch. But he won that fight against Alan Patrick. I mean, Alan Patrick looked awful. But McDessie looked awful, but Patrick looked worse. But McDessie won, but for some reason the judges gave it the other way. So my bonehead is the judges for this weekend. I mean, the event was awful anyway, but the judges didn't help it.
P-Money.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'll present to you my bonehead of the week, Benson Henderson. Yes, I just said that I thought he won his fight. But again, let me clarify, I haven't got to review that. Anyhow, I thought Benson was boring before it was cool to think Benson was boring. And now he's getting all these split decisions. He's getting the gifts. I'll tell you what, I'll admit it right now. The Frankie Edgar fights, questionable wins. The Melendez fight, questionable win. And now he's saying he's shocked. Aldo's coming up, and he's going to get this title shot instantly. What have you done to get that title shot, to warrant it? Man, you barely did enough to warrant keeping that title, and you barely even won your rebound fight. So you got to pump those brakes, Benson Henderson, because once again, you are my bonehead of the week.
A good stable of boneheads. We got this Texas State Athletic Commission. We got every resident of the state of New Jersey, the judges at UFC 169. But I got to give it to Bendo Henderson. You take his very, very questionable decision wins against Gilbert Melendez, Frankie Edgar. I think Gil Melendez at UFC on Fox 7, Frankie Edgar at UFC 150, and now Josh Thompson at UFC on Fox 10. Benson is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He could very well be 1-4. And even if he beat Thompson with a finish, even if he dominated him, I'm sorry, you're only 1 fight removed from getting finished yourself in the first round against the current champion. Even George St-Pierre, I believe, needed to fight more than once to get his belt back. Maybe, it may have been once, but he's not a GSP. And, like I said, even if he finished Josh, I would want him to fight at least one more time before he gets the belt, because Bendo versus Pettis, too, that was not a close fight. Pettis not only subbed him, but he was blowing Bendo up with body kicks right before that. And you're saying you deserve the title shot more than arguably the pound-for-pound king, Jose Aldo? Give me a break, Bendo. You're my bonehead of the week. Jay?
I think I've got to go with Benson as well. I think you're right. I think his luck is running out. I mean, I don't know what happens soon. Does his chin just disappear? You only get a certain number of ticks before your luck completely runs out. I don't know. I seriously don't know what's up with him. He's now saying that Jose Aldo shouldn't get the title fight and all this. I'm just trying to find out the official statistics on his pay-per-view buys, and I know they're not that good. I'm just trying to double check them now. Pettis only got 270,000. Edgar only got 190,000. And people don't care to see him fight. That's the reality of it, because he's never interesting. He's never he's never been a guy who's, oh yeah, let's go watch him fight, like you get with the Diaz boys. What's he doing? He can't be demanding title shots. I think what's best for him is he keeps fighting guys between the top 20 and top 10, and he doesn't get a title fight till he finishes one of them, because he's 8 or 9 fights in his UFC career without one finish. It's just, to me, that's absolutely pathetic. And I know he's fighting guys in the top end of the division, but he's also fought guys like Mark Bocek, and I mean, come on, like, if Pettis can finish guys in the top end of the division, so can he. Move on, Benson Henderson, change his strategy, because it's getting boring and people just don't like you. People won't buy into your cards, so why are you going to get a title fight? Simple as that.
Raymondo.
I'm not picking Benson as my bonehead, but I think one thing they need to do for Benson is they need to move him off the main event, because I don't really want to see another Benson 5-round fight. Benson should be in 3-round fights for the time being. But my bonehead's going to go to Texas State. What they've done to Jessica Rai is just out of order. I mean, she puts her life on the line when she goes in there and does that. She, like they all do, all the athletes, they train hard, they work their, I don't want to say balls off because she's a lady, but they work their guts off, and then to get screwed like that so many months after for something as petty as that is just absolutely ridiculous. So my bonehead goes to Texas State for that reason.
P-Money.
Well, I need to echo those sentiments.
You're fading out a little bit there, Patrick. Is your connection okay?
Oh, we should be good. We should be good.
Much better.
Beautiful. Yep, Texas State Athletic Commission, they are my bonehead of the week. You guys pretty much summed it up. It's ridiculous. They're messing with this young woman's livelihood, and it's a tough game in the MMA game as it is. Got the personal things going on. Can't be fucking around like that. the TSAC is my bonehead of the week.
Well, it looks like we got a two-way tie between Benson Henderson and the TSAC, Texas State Athletic Commission, both for being boneheads. Quit being boneheads. Let's move on to the news. We got a few topics to talk about before we break down UFC 169 and send this out into the internet. Dana White says that Chris Weidman is the number one pound-for-pound fighter if he beats Vitor. He beat the greatest of all time twice, Anderson Silva, and going up against Belfort. Dana says Weidman deserves that spot if he beats him. I say maybe move him up as far as 3. Barao, Mighty Mouse, and Kane. They're all solid, but I think if Chris can really beat that murderer's row of Anderson, Vitor, he maybe deserves a spot there. Moving him up to number 1, though, I just don't know if I can move him in good faith above Jones or Aldo with only 2 title defenses. And on top of that, I mean, let's be serious. Before he fought Anderson Silva at UFC 162, he really didn't have any wins that would put him on the list. I mean, yeah, he beat Mark Munoz, who has proven to have a questionable chin. He just got knocked out by Lyoto Machida. Before that, I mean, who did he beat? Tom Lawler and Jesse Bongfeld. So maybe if he fought, some better guys coming up, I would think about it. But I don't know. I just can't put him 1 or 2 in front of Jose Aldo or John Jones, even if he finishes Vitor in the first round. If he gets through the murderer's row of Vitor, Jacare, and Lyoto, I'll maybe, think about putting him number 1. But with only two title defenses, I mean, you look at what Jones and Aldo have done, I just can't do it in good faith. Jay, what do you think?
I think I don't really know what Dana White is chatting about, because he said before this fight that if Renan Barao beats Faber, he'll be pound for pound. I don't think Dana really has an idea what he's talking about. I know me and Jake discussed this the other day. There is 2 things that people seem to mix up. One is you've got the pound for pound debate. That is, if every fighter were in one division, say for instance it was welterweight, how they would match up with other guys. The other thing people debate is division dominance. In division dominance, I think Weidman is number 1. I think he already is. Wins over Anderson Silva twice. That's enough in my mind to get you ahead of most people, because of course Silva was the champion for X amount of years and he went 18-0 in the UFC. In terms of pound for pound, I've still got Jones at number 1, and Weidman, yeah, he's beaten Silva, but he's beaten Silva who, when you look at it in terms of facts, Silva was a 38-year-old, and he's beaten him twice in very controversial ways. Could he do that against somebody like Aldo? Yes, maybe, but I don't think he could do it against guys like Barao, who have power everywhere. So yeah, he's probably in the top 6 for me, but for me, the pound for pound number 1 is Jones, Barao number 2, and if we're talking about division dominance, he is already number 1 in my eyes.
Yeah, I don't agree with Weidman being up that high either. I think I was impressed with his win over Munoz, and of course he's beat Silva twice. People are going to kind of say about the dubious way the fights have won, but as far as I'm concerned, Weidman was had an opponent in front of him. Regardless of how the fight goes, he won twice. I've got Jones number 1. Probably now. I mean, it's always been between Jones and Silva, and of course GSP. GSP's obviously gone. I wouldn't have Aldo so high just because I find the way he fights unimpressive. And I think if he was up against, there's other people at higher weight classes that win in a more emphatic fashion than what he does. But I'd certainly have Barao up there. But yeah, Weidman's not top 3 yet, in my opinion. But I have to say, though, if he does go on to beat the likes of Balfour, Machida, and Jacare, then that would, for me, would put him up there in the top 2 or 3, because those 3 opponents, after beating Silva, I don't care what anyone says, they're all worthwhile opponents, and if you beat them, then that means something.
Yeah, I certainly don't agree with Chris Weidman being number 1 pound for pound. If he beats Vitor, he's got to get at least one more win in there. If he were to beat, I'd say, Jacare convincingly, that might maybe get me to start changing my mind. Because the thing is, what those 2 wins over Anderson Silva does, for me at least, in the pound for pound, is that Anderson Silva, he fought 3 times in the UFC at 205 pounds. And he won those in incredible fashion each time against, well, in 2 cases, larger opponents. Anyhow, so to me, that enhances his pound for pound status. But for right now, I actually do have Jose Aldo at number 1 pound for pound, truthfully. Simply because John Jones, he lost to Gustafsson. This is a fact. That's all I can say about that. And Jose Aldo, he has the win over Frankie Edgar, who arguably could have and should have still been the 155-pound champion. So again, talking about beating people at other weight classes, that right there, that's just a incredibly solid statement. Not to mention, he's the only featherweight champion, which when they were pointing that out during the UFC 169 pay-per-view broadcast, just blew my mind. But yeah, so I've got Jose Aldo number 1 right now, but given the competition there is for Weidman at middleweight, as it's already been stated before, with a couple more wins, he could certainly be knocking on the door of number 1.
Certainly, he's getting close. I believe right now he, I think he was number 4 before. I'm saying I think when I could just pull up the UFC rankings right now. All right, UFC rankings on the UFC.com page. Chris Weidman was number 5. The top 5 was Jones, Aldo, Velasquez, Mighty Mouse, Weidman, and with the win against Uriah Faber, Henan Barao leapfrogs Weidman and Johnson, moving Weidman down to 6. Just in case anyone's wondering, 2 men who are both on the pound for pound list: Jose Aldo, number 2, and Anthony Pettis, number 8. They will apparently be fighting July 4th for the lightweight title. We recently heard that fight we were just talking about for the middleweight strap, Chris Weidman versus Vitor Belfort, that fight is going to be May 24th in Las Vegas on Memorial Day weekend. Co-main evented by Chael Sonnen versus Vanderlei Silva, and it looks like the July 4th card now will have Aldo versus Pettis as the main event. And Benson, we mentioned, talking crap about that. Benson isn't the only lightweight though who is up in that mix. You have Grant, who's been waiting for a title shot forever now. I don't know if he's over his concussion symptoms yet. You obviously have Gil Melendez coming off that win versus Diego Sanchez at UFC 166. You have Rafael Dos Anjos. You have Nate Diaz, who just destroyed Gray Maynard. Donald Cerrone coming up the ranks. Khabib Nurmagomedov. Do any lightweights deserve this title shot more than Jose Aldo? I don't think so. Jose is the number 2 pound for pound. He's beaten everybody that has been put in front of him in the WEC or UFC. So I think whatever Jose wants to do, you give it to him because he's that good. Ray, do any lightweights deserve this lightweight title shot more than Jose Aldo?
Yeah, I'm happy to see Aldo fight Pettis because I think this will be the undoing of Aldo personally. I think Aldo's very overrated. He's someone that doesn't impress me at all. Like I've said before, because he does enough to scrape the win and he runs out of steam late on. But I think there is one person who deserves it more personally, based on performances in the lightweight division. But I think that person's injured. I'm sure I've read somewhere, and I'm sure it was Jay that said that he's out till September, October. But for me, the number 1 contender is TJ Grant. I mean, TJ Grant's annihilated his last few opponents, and I know we saw Diaz knock Maynard out, but let's not forget it was Grant that knocked him out first. So yeah, I think TJ Grant should be the next contender for the lightweight title, but only when he's obviously fit and ready to fight.
I like Grant for the next lightweight contender as well. Since his drop from 170, he's just been on a tear. It's really sad that he's been out so long for these post-concussion symptoms. But Jose Aldo, really the thing is, the only issue I have with him fighting for the title is just what it does to the other divisions. Of course, at the post-fight press conference, Dana saying, Aldo's just going to vacate, and they're going to do a new UFC 145-pound champion. If Aldo wins, he's staying at 55. If he ever wants to go back to 45, he can cut the weight and have an immediate title shot back there. So I don't like it holding up the potential contenders coming up right now, like your TJ Grants or your Khabib Nurmagomedovs.
I think Benson Henderson, as I said before, in my eyes, he'd have to get a finish before he can fight for that title. Only because he's been, it wouldn't sell. It really wouldn't sell at all, and that's the reality of it. If you don't sell, what's the point? Melendez could do it, but his only win so far is Diego Sanchez, who was unranked walking into that match. So you can see why it wouldn't be Melendez. Josh Thompson is now coming off the loss. Nate Diaz, he only just got beaten by Benson, so he'll be back in a couple of fights. I mean, there are guys, the underrated guys in the division are Rafael Dos Anjos and Khabib. They're on very good win streaks right now. But TJ Grant, the interesting thing about TJ Grant is Ray is right. He's out now till October. I think there's a card he wants to join on. I think they've announced really prematurely. It's like October the 4th in Halifax. But every day that Grant is injured, he is becoming less and less significant. I mean, you think about his wins. Maynard, who is currently his latest streak supposedly is 1 win, 3 losses, 1 draw. Weidman, who went 2-2 with his 2 wins, are over 2 cut fighters. Not sure about Danzig yet, but I think Danzig may as well be cut. Dunham, who's recently gone 1-3. Prater 1-4 and cut. Roller 1-4 and cut. Every day that goes by, Grant's win streak looks less impressive. No doubt that 1 win and he'll be right back in there. But for now, the division's at a kind of standstill anyway. I mean, we're waiting for one definitive challenger. With Melendez and the Khabib fight falling out, I think it's perfect timing for Aldo to come up or Pettis to go down, really. If the belt does get vacated, I think it's got to be Swanson versus Mendez. Both guys are the only guys left still on streaks now that Lamas has gone and Guida's been stopped. That fight is interesting. I guess we have Jeremy Elkins, but he's only 3 wins in a row now. But yeah, I think the division's looking pretty slow right now.
Word. We're adding P Money back to the call right now. So Ray, go ahead and give us your thoughts.
I've already gave thoughts on this one.
Oh, you're right.
That was the last
Patrick.
one.
Patrick, are you back?
Patrick's already given it as well.
Yes, I am back. Thank God.
Oh yeah, brother. All right, cool. Yeah, I was looking ahead to the next topic. My bad. Pat Barry apparently moving to Glory Kickboxing. He made his announcement that he's done with mixed martial arts, at least for now, which is probably a good call. He's shown in fights that he's definitely down for the whole striking part of MMA, but grappling he really hasn't gotten accustomed to yet. So he's moving to Glory Kickboxing. There's definitely going to be a increase in the skill of his opponents as far as kickboxing goes, obviously, as he's joining a kickboxing organization. He's apparently going to get 1 tune-up fight, and I believe the organization's called the CFFC, but he's going to fight once there and then move to Glory. The question is very simple. Do you think Pat Barry will succeed in a top-flight kickboxing organization? Patrick?
I'll tell you what. My name is Patrick. His name is Patrick. Well, I mean, unless it's just Patrick, right? So naturally, I've got to root for him, and I always have rooted for HD. He's always fun to watch. Hyper die. I mean, gotta love the dude. I just really worry about his chin. The Soa Palele knockout, that was brutal. Some of the knockouts he suffered, the one against Czech Congo, that was brutal. So I worry that he's moving into kickboxing where the technical acumen is even greater, at least in the stand-up aspect. Granted, he is a fantastic kickboxer, and perhaps just the fact that there is going to be no ground game, that will give him the chance to unleash that devastating kickboxing that we always love seeing when he gets the chance to pop off in the UFC. So I really hope he's going to be successful in Glory. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, though.
Simply the question you asked, well, do you think he will succeed in kickboxing? I hate to be blunt, but no, unless he's going to go down and weight. I mean, he was 8-7 in his MMA career, and that's a pretty poor record. But you've got to remember that there is more than one style. But in his last 4 fights, I think he got finished 3 times. I mean, Lavar just ran across the cage throwing uppercuts, and he didn't have any defense for that. Sean Jordan managed to knock him out, and that's pretty much just a powerful guy. And then Saad Paleli came along and knocked him out. These are all fights that he should have been able to pull out of the bag. I don't know. I don't know where he stands, unless I think he should have just dropped down to 205 and stuck it out for one more UFC fight, maybe for a guy like Maldonado, giving it a good try. But I don't think he'll do well in kickboxing. Going back, and with the chin that's now apparently controversial, I don't think he'll have much success at all. No, he won't be. I don't see how he fares well in a martial art where it's strictly aiming to try and punch the other guy in the face, and that's just not going to work for him. I mean, he's got the leg kicks, but he's a short guy. The chin is the easiest. The face is the easiest part for them to kick, and I don't think he's going to do well at all. He's such a nice guy, but no.
I've enjoyed watching Pat Barry. Fight. You know, he's an exciting fighter. He's had some really, good moments, winning and losing. Even when he's lost, he's normally entertaining, but he's one of them where if he leaves the UFC, he's not going to be missed because he was never really a serious contender. And with regards to kickboxing, I'll be honest with you, I've got no interest in kickboxing. I never really have. I've never followed it. So once he goes and fights in kickboxing, I won't know how he does because I won't be following it. And without trying to sound horrible, I'm not really too fussed once he's left the MMA. I won't be following him, so I don't know how he'll do. And I don't really care how he does. I hope it goes the way he wants it to go, but I won't be keeping an eye out for it.
Yeah, Glory's done an excellent job in the United States of marketing themselves. Their shows are prime time on Spike Television, which is a channel most people get. So I could definitely see not following it as closely in the United Kingdom. Let's try and breeze through these last 2 topics relatively quickly. Tough Nations, 2 seasons have started recently. Tough Nations China and Tough Canada versus Australia. Tough's trying to, get more and more international as things go on. Have you found either watchable? China is just without a doubt not watchable. And Canada versus Australia I watched, and I couldn't really watch that either. And, I'm not a xenophobic person, but even if these were Americans, I'm not digging these seasons of Tough whatsoever. Jay, what do you think?
I haven't even started Tough Nations yet. I do love Tough, but I don't know where to find them. Maybe I've got to ask Ray to set me up with some links or something. The TUF China is supposed to be, from everything I've read, I've been reading spoilers on that one, and that just looks, from what I've heard, just sounded appalling. I will catch up on Nations, but why is it so bad, man? You gotta tell me that.
I'm following them both. Tough Nations, I don't mind so much. I think with these ones, I think in the past with the big American Ultimate Fighters, I think what really helps is having 2 strong coaches who you care about and coaches who you look forward to seeing fight. We haven't got that with Tough Nations. I think Kyle Noak and Patrick Cote, neither of them are like real standout guys in the UFC. They've both been in the UFC for a long time, but you don't really get excited, I don't think, for a Noak fight or a Cote fight. So that doesn't help. But the fights so far have been pretty good. I mean, it's all very one-sided at the moment, of course, for Canada. But the fight next week looks good as well. So I'm not minding that one so much. Tough China, I'm really struggling with. I'm 9 episodes in. I'm watching it just out of habit because I've never missed a season. And I'm pretty stubborn with stuff like that. But it's by far the worst Ultimate Fighter I've ever watched. I mean, the standard of the fighters is terrible. The coaches, again, absolutely awful. One of them has never fought in the UFC. I think he's left the show now. And another one is obviously Taekwon Zhang. I mean, he's fought in the UFC, but I don't think any of the fans that are just mainstream fans, they're not going to know who he is, and they're not going to care who he is. Kung Lee's role in the show seems completely pointless. But some of the performances on the show has been absolutely shocking. You had one guy who was some kind of yoga teacher or whatever. He'd never even been in and sparred with someone before, and every time he was in sparring and getting caught, he was just turtling up. So the process for picking the fighters for the show was just embarrassing. And then another guy, a fight I watched the other day, we had someone miss weight, but then we see that on the big American ones as well. It shouldn't happen, but it does. But we had another guy the other day, and I don't think I haven't seen this since the early UFCs. He actually tapped out to the full mount. I'm not even joking. So he was on his back. The guy mounted him. Before he could throw any punches, he just tapped him on the chest, and that was the end of the fight. So yeah, Tough China's is absolutely awful, but Tough Nations, as far as I'm concerned, is good. But to be honest with you, the next couple of seasons of Ultimate Fighter are the ones I'm looking forward to. There's one coming up soon, of course, with BJ Penn and Edgar, and you've got there's a guy from Ireland fighting on it called Cattle Pendred, who looks like it's going to be amazing, as well as Diego Lima. And if you follow Bellator and see Douglas Lima, if he's anything like his brother, that's going to be exciting. And then, of course, after that, I think probably what I'm just as excited, if not more so, and I think Jay probably the same as well, is the strawweights, especially seeing Joanne Calderwood do. Like we talked about Biggie Rhodes earlier on, she's another fighter that we've had on the show a few times. I know Jay spoke to her, I've spoke to her. I think it's fair to say we're both big JoJo Calderwood fans, so I can't wait to see how she gets on the Ultimate Fighter. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the next two seasons more than the current two seasons I'm watching. And of course, Tough Brazil as well, just because of the coaches, Sonnen and Silva, both of them are amazing. So I'm looking forward to that one as well.
P-Money.
Damn, yeah, Tough is going crazy these days. I almost forgot about the strawweight Tough. That's going to be epic. And I think that's really what I'm going to need to
Patrick, come off mute.
He's not muted. I can hear him.
Are we good?
Yeah, that was... I don't know. I could hear him fine.
Okay.
It's weird.
Could you hear me?
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you as well.
All right. Well, since we're all sorted, yeah, I watched the first episode of Tough Canada just because it premiered right after, I don't even remember what event it was, and I found it fairly entertaining. Hey, I'm sorry, I had to laugh at the log cabin house. I just thought it was perfect. It's okay, you know. I DVR it. Tough China, have not gotten the chance to watch it. Judging by what my man Ray has said, I don't really know that I'll even give it a chance. Sounds like a bad Chinese reality show or something.
That's pretty much exactly what it is. One last bit of news before we get to guess that tweet and break down UFC 169. Anthony Johnson has been brought back to the UFC. Don't adjust your dial. You heard me right. He's been he has been just knocking people out senselessly in the World Series of Fighting, and he's being brought back to the UFC. And Zuffa is not waiting to give him quality opponents. He's going to be fighting Phil Davis at UFC 172. That's going to be the card, I believe, in March or April in Baltimore, Maryland. I have it right here in front of me. UFC 172. That's, April 26th. Baltimore, Maryland. Jones versus Teixeira. And the two obvious questions are, A, should the UFC have brought Anthony Johnson back to the UFC, or was it a little premature? B, Davis versus Rumble Johnson. Who you got? Ray Thompson.
Firstly, for the simple answer for question A is yes. Johnson has done so well outside of UFC, in the World Series of Fighting. And again, it's not just the fact he's winning; it's how he's winning. He's knocking people out. You know, he fought a heavyweight against Arlovsky, and he beat Arlovsky. He didn't knock Arlovsky out, but he did beat him. And of course, he knocked out Mike Kyle in the last fight. He's had, to be honest with you, since he stopped pissing around with trying to make welterweight, and of course the whole Balfour thing, where he missed weight there, he looks fantastic at light heavyweight. I don't think he should go up to heavyweight. I think he needs to stay at 205. So I think he definitely deserves another shot in the UFC, because he has gone away and he's got his head down, and he's beating people for fun, and he's beating good people as well. So he deserves it. Do I think he'll beat Phil Davis? I don't. I think Phil Davis is really, really good. I suppose the interesting thing there, of course, is we know Johnson likes to wrestle. So if Johnson can keep the fight standing, he's capable of knocking Davis out. But I think Davis will be able to take him down, and maybe even submit Johnson. But it's certainly an interesting fight, and I don't think Davis will be like a massive favourite. It'll be a favourite, but not a huge favourite. But yeah, I'm glad Johnson's getting an opportunity, and I'd like to see Johnson win because he's exciting to watch. But I think Davis will do it.
Oh, you were up. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah, I'm very excited for Rumble to get back in the UFC. He's a dynamic fighter. I mean, hell, no matter what weight classes he's at, he's got knockout power. It's insane to think he was fighting at 170 just a couple years ago. I mean, occasionally he would make weight for 170 every now and then, which was just insane. Now that we look at the frame that he carries, even at 205. It's just massive. You're like, man, how do you get that down to 170? But I like his odds against Phil Davis here. I mean, heck, these guys are cut from the same cloth. I don't know exactly how their wrestling accolades or records compare side by side. But as far as MMA wrestling goes, Anthony Johnson, he seems to have a pretty good handle on it. He's been in the game for longer than Phil Davis. He's got the big show experience, and I love this fight. It's going to be good.
Yeah, should be a fantastic fight. I'm so glad that Johnson's back. Davis is a nice matchup for him as well, especially since Rumble's now training at the Black Zillions. I think he should be able to keep the fight standing. I mean, we've seen what Belfort's been doing, and we know that he's going to be sparring with the likes of Rashad. And Rashad's one guy who knows how to shoot on takedowns. So Johnson should have a good shot with keeping this on the feet. A lot of people are complaining, saying that this is it's an unfair matchup for Phil Davis, but in my eyes, Phil Davis is coming off a loss, and he hasn't been all that impressive. And as Ray said, Rumble definitely has been impressive, so it is the right matchup. I mean, people are also complaining the rankings mean nothing. Johnson, if he had been fighting in the UFC, he's 7-4 in the UFC, and his last loss was to the current number one contender for the middleweight championship. I mean, this guy shouldn't have ever been cut, really. He's only cut because he's missing weight, and he weighed in as a light heavyweight for a middleweight match. Like, he should be in there. This is a great fight for him. He's done his duty in World Series of Fighting, and this should be a nice fight. I'm looking forward to it.
Word up. Well, without any further ado, you know what that brings us to. It's time for Guess That Tweet. That's right. I got 6 tweets ready. 5 just normal regulation tweets. And if it's tied after 5, we go to overtime to decide who wins. It's a very simple concept. I read a tweet. Then the guys on the panel have to guess who tweeted it. I will give them a list of potential answers. If nobody gets it right, I get a point. If they get it right, they get the point. The host has never won, I believe, in like 40 attempts or something. But it is time for Guess That Tweet. And it is a Champions edition of Guess That Tweet. Every answer will be a current UFC champion. Let's get straight to it. The first one. It was about UFC 169, and the tweet was, early stop, but Renan Barão is a beast. Early stop, but Renan Barão is a beast. They did not agree with Herb Dean stopping Barão Faber as early as he did. Who tweeted it? Anthony Pettis, Chris Weidman, John Jones, or Demetrius Johnson? Jay?
I don't think Demetrius Johnson even watches any fights but his own. John Jones, I don't know what he does. He probably is doing the whole DUI thing all the time. Well, who were the other two?
Chris Weidman and Anthony Pettis.
Chris Weidman only really tweets out pictures of himself and American flags, so for that reason I'm going to go with Anthony Pettis.
He goes with Tony Pettis. Ray?
My first thought was Pettis as well, so I'm going to go with Pettis as well.
Patrick?
I hate to be a copycat, so I won't. I'm going to go with Chris Weidman.
You should have been a copycat. The answer was Anthony Pettis, and I feel like That was a shitty tweet to pick because Ray and Jay sniffed it out so quickly. Let's move on. This tweet. The central question of a warrior's training is not how we avoid uncertainty and fear, but how we relate to the discomfort. This is a deep tweet. Was it? I'll read it one more time. The central question of a warrior's training is not how we avoid uncertainty and fear, but how we relate to discomfort. Was it Demetrius Johnson, Anthony Pettis, Jose Aldo, or Ronda Rousey? P-Money?
Shit. Wow, that's kind of a shocker. I'll go with Ronda Rousey.
Ray?
My first thought when I heard that tweet was Ronda Rousey. She's quite spiritualist and a martial artist, so I'd go with Ronda Rousey.
Alright, Jay's connection popped out, so I will reread it for him. The central question...
I heard Ronda Rousey, that's all I heard.
Yeah, that's why I'm rereading it, you jackass.
Okay, cheers. I think my connection's done.
The central question of a warrior's training is not how we avoid uncertainty and fear, but how we relate to the discomfort. Was it Demetrius Johnson, Anthony Pettis, Jose Aldo, or Ronda Rousey?
Well, Aldo only really tweets in Brazilian. Demetrius Johnson, as I said.
I will say, before you interject, if I did choose an Aldo or Barao tweet, I had it translated. So Barao and Aldo, even if I read it in English, there's a chance it's a translated tweet.
Okay, fair enough. I'll go with Rousey anyway.
Everybody picks Rousey. It was not Ronda Rousey. It was not Jose Aldo. It was not Mighty Mouse. I picked Pettis again, you suckers, and nobody got it right. So Jay has a point. Ray has a point. I have a point. Patrick's still looking to get on the board. Next tweet.
Damn.
If snow allows, I'll be leaving for the airport in a bit! Exclamation point. If snow allows, I'll be leaving for the airport in a bit. Was it John Jones, Demetrius Johnson, Jose Aldo, or Anthony Pettis? Jay?
I guess I'll go with Jose Aldo.
I'll go with Demetrius Johnson.
Well, I know John Jones was in New York recently, and I'm thinking if the snow allows means he's waiting to come down from cocaine or something like that, so I'm picking John Jones.
I like your reasoning the most. Before I give the right answer, I talked about snow. Usually you break it down really logically. Jay, why did you pick Jose Aldo? It doesn't snow in Brazil.
Because he just thought, oh yeah, he's in Vegas, wasn't he? I don't know, man. And my connection is really bad, so I didn't hear the word snow.
Well, you're probably lucky that you didn't, because it was actually Jose Aldo waiting
When
on the
was this
snow.
tweet?
I don't
When was
know.
this tweet?
I don't have the date in front of me, but it was Jose Aldo who was waiting on the snow to fly out, and you got it right. So 2 points for Jay. Let's move on to the fourth tweet. Someone is super excited for the Disney Junior performance to start, and it's an Instagram, and there is a picture of a happy little kid. So someone's super excited for the Disney Junior performance to start, and it's a pic of a happy kid.
I'm gonna
it?
go with Cain Velasquez.
Can I read my fucking answers out? And it's Patrick first. You should be
Snake draft,
disqualified. Come on, son. You're like a goddamn amateur. Was it Cain Velasquez, Chris Weidman, Jose Aldo, or Anthony Pettis? Patrick?
Well, I'll go with Cain Velasquez.
Ray?
I'll go for Cain Velasquez.
Yeah, we all know Jay cheats. It was Cain Velasquez. But you know what? I'm not going to give Jay a point because he spoke out of order. He stays at 2 points. Ray has 2 points. Patrick has a point, and I have a point. Let's move to the final tweet of regulation. Hashtag Throwback Thursday. Mean muggin' since day one. And it's a picture of them as a child, and they're making a mean face. Was it Anthony Pettis, Demetrius Johnson, John Jones, or Ronda Rousey? Jay, now you are eligible to get a point because I've read all the possible answers, and it's your turn to speak. So you will actually get the point if you get this right. Jay?
Well, you guys are cheating me out points here. I saw him and Daniel Cormier and his kids go to Disneyland, so that was far too easy, Jake. As
Your
for
boy,
this one, I don't quite
your boy
know.
makes the rules. You spoke out of turn. No point. No points for you.
Okay, something about an angry kid's face. Can you
it's
read the people out again?
Throwback Thursday, mean mugging since day one, and it's a picture of this fighter as a little kid making an angry face. Was it Demetrius Johnson, Anthony Pettis, Ronda Rousey, or John Jones?
I'm gonna mix things up, and I'll go with. Will I? No, I don't think Demetrius Johnson tweets shit. I'm gonna go with Ronda Rousey.
My first thought was either Rousey or Pettis, so I'm going to go for Ronda Rousey as well.
I'm going Ronda Rousey as well.
Man, I must have done a shitty job picking tweets because it was actually Ronda Rousey, mean mugging since day one. Jay would have won, but he lost a point for speaking out of turn, which means Ray is tied with him 3 points to 3, and we're going to an overtime tweet. Which will be, Happy New Year's, everybody. Passed out before the ball dropped. Hope everyone was safe and had a good time. Was it John Jones, Demetrius Johnson, Tony Pettis, or Ronda Rousey? Ray, I'll let you pick first.
I'm going to go with Demetrius Johnson.
That's the one person I wouldn't pick. I think Demetrius Johnson is very, although he probably wouldn't take many beers to get drunk, he probably wouldn't drink at all. John Jones has got the DUI, so I've got to go with John Jones.
John Jones, turns out, is the incorrect pick. It was Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, meaning that Ray takes it all. Ray, do you have a speech for us for winning this week's edition of Guess That Tweet?
It's been that long since I've won, I forgot what a victory speech is. Woohoo!
That's all he says. He doesn't have much to say except woohoo. That is, Guess That Tweet. Let's move on. UFC 169. That was this past Saturday. We're going to break down this card and then send this episode out into the internet. UFC 169. It wasn't all unbalanced like UFC on Fox 10. Instead of having one fight and 6 fights, we had 3 fights on Fight Pass and 4 fights on Fox Sports 1. The 3 fights that we had on UFC Fight Pass: Neil Magny defeating Ghassan Umaledov, Rashid Magomedov defeating Tony Martin at lightweight, and Clint Hester defeating Andy Enns at middleweight. All 3 of these fights went to the decision. Any thoughts on these 3 fights? Hester, Magomedov, and Neil Magny upsetting Ghassan Umaledov. P-Money?
Yeah, I thought the Fight Pass fights were pretty entertaining. Some good back and forth. The Magomedov fight was a good fight. I mean, God, he got out of a super tough armbar. He really put a beating on the other kid. His name's escaping me right now. But it was a good fight. I mean, both of them looked to be solid prospects at 155. And other kid, even though he obviously didn't impress me enough to remember his name,
Tony
he did
Martin.
seem like... Yeah, there we go. old Martin, of course. He did seem like a pretty good prospect. So, yeah, there were some good ones on the Fight Pass fights.
Yeah, I guess you had the I can't even remember my Russian boys, Ruslan. Was it? Yeah, I think you guys said Ruslan, and then you had the Neil Magny fight. That Magny fight was absolutely pathetic. Yeah, I suppose I don't know what this Fight Pass thing is. Over here, we're still watching it on the YouTube. On the YouTube. So we're lucky over here, but yeah, it was the one fight was fun to watch. The other two were less memorable. That's all I can say.
I'm with Patrick. I enjoyed the Fight Pass fights. The best fight of the Fight Pass was Clint Hester and Andy Enns. I mean, them two, they just kind of traded. It was really exciting back and forth fight. I think if Andy Enns had had a better first round opponent or an easier first round opponent because he had Uriah Hall, he probably would have made it into the house. Rashid Magomedov and Tony Martin looked good. The funny thing with the Neil Magny fight was when he was facing Ghassan Umatov, the Russian. But the thing that was funny was that Neil Magny had a 10-inch reach advantage. I mean, that's just hilarious. But yeah, the prelim passes were good. It went downhill from there, obviously, but the prelim pass was good. But Hester and the End stole the show of the first three fights, in my opinion.
Jake?
Word up. Sorry, I thought someone else was talking. I was also watching a video of a leopard attacking somebody at the Sochi Olympics. That is going to be a disaster of an event. Let's move on to the Fox Sports 1 prelims. We had Al Iaquinta defeating Kevin Lee pretty handily. We had Nick Catone defeating Tom Watson in what was one of the many controversial decisions of the night. We also had Chris Carriasso defeat Danny Martinez at flyweight, and Alan Patrick defeating John McDessie in probably the most controversial decision of the night. Alan Patrick, definitely a guy who I think will linger around the UFC a while. He had that funny backflip off the scale during the weigh-ins at UFC 169. But I think most people watching that saw John the Bull McDessie winning, which was a little disappointing. But what stood out, we started the card 7 for 7, going to the distance. Jay, what did you think of these four fights?
These were the moments where the judging decisions, you're questioning whether they're going to be some upsets in the main event. I thought Watson won. I thought McDessie won. The fights, they don't really stand out. We're not going to be looking back in the future thinking, oh my God, these were the undercard to watch. There was nothing special, and I couldn't believe it. I think the only time, the closest we've come before is the UFC China card fairly recently, where up to the co-main event, everything was the decision, and Thiago Silva versus Nedkov changed that, and then you had I think it was Franklin Kung Lee that changed it again. But other than that, these cards, nothing really was super memorable.
For me, this is where the card started to go downhill. Al Iaquinta and Kevin Lee was a good fight. I enjoyed that fight, and that was clearly Al won. There was no doubt there, even though Kevin Lee had his back for the majority of one of the rounds. But Al won, 29-28. One judge scored it 28-27 because he's a fucking idiot. As I talked about earlier on, Catone Watson was awful. Watson was robbed, but it was still an awful fight. Carriasso Martinez was an awful fight. And Alan Patrick McDessie, as well as being a robbery, was an awful fight as well. Those three fights were the ones that just really downturned this card. It was just horrible from here for me. It was such a hard card to watch because it was just walling and stalling. There was just very little action. Probably one of the worst preliminary cards live on Fox Sports I've ever seen.
P-Money?
Well, I got lucky in regards to this as I did not watch it live. I opted not to for whatever reason. I said, I'm going to DVR these fights. I watched the Fight Pass prelims live, waited to order the pay-per-view, and I'm glad I did because apparently it just ruined the evening for most people. I have not had the chance to go back and watch it yet, nor have I had the inclination. But granted, we have a couple weeks until the next event. I'll probably go back and watch these fights and just get angry.
Yeah, that's what most people did live. It was not the best card. I think Dana White even called it a catastrophe of a card after the fights. But the one thing that saved this card was Abel Trujillo knocking out Jamie Varner halfway through the second round, knocking him out cold with a punch. It was the only finish in the first 11 fights. Just horrible. Abel was actually awarded $125,000 for this here and $50,000 for knockout of the night. He and Jamie both earned $75,000 for fight of the night, seemingly because it seemed like they were the only two people interested in finishing a fight on the entire card. But Abel Trujillo looked amazing, roared back. He was getting his ass his ass handed to him by Jamie Varner, and ended up knocking him out. The 30-year-old Black Zillion from Des Moines, Iowa. He's now actually on a pretty decent streak. He's 3-1 since joining the UFC back in 2012. His only loss coming to top lightweight Khabib Nurmagomedov, and now he's beaten Roger Bowling and Jamie Varner back to back via KO or TKO. What did you think of the fight? And is Trujillo the real deal at lightweight, Ray?
This fight for me basically saved the whole card. It was just an absolutely amazing fight. You know, like Varner said, he'd rather go out there and lose like that than win a boring decision. They both went for the finish. You know, Varner was winning that fight. He had Trujillo backing up, and he was landing with some punches. And I was waiting for Trujillo to drop. The way Varner was fighting, I was waiting for Trujillo to drop. Somehow he didn't, and then out of nowhere, he just caught him bang on the button with a punch, and Varner was just out instantly. As soon as he landed that punch, he was out. But it was amazing. Is Trujillo the real deal? Yeah, he's the real deal. He deserves to be in the lightweights in that division. He's going to get another big opponent. Varner's a big opponent. He's the first person apparently to knock Varner out. That says a lot. The only time he's lost was to Khabib, where Khabib just completely out wrestled him. But we've seen how good Khabib is. Khabib is an elite lightweight, you know. So there's no shame in losing to Khabib, and he did lose by decision. So yeah, for me, Abel's the real deal, and I can't wait to see what. He's a fighter that I look forward to watching because of how powerful he is, you know, and seeing what he did against Varner after the punishment he'd taken, it was amazing. It was we needed it on that card because the card was that bad. But them two, they rescued that event for me.
Yeah, well, Abel hit him with that absolute. Oh, are you? Yeah, you're next, Patrick, aren't you? My bad, Patrick. Jump in.
Jay, sweet Jesus, what's going on? It's all right. I know.
I'm docking Jay an additional point for that.
Does that mean I've won without the tiebreaker? Yes.
Jay next week is going to start at -1. Sorry, go ahead.
I think that's fair play. Jay, I don't know. You can sound off on that next, but sweet Jesus, I completely forgot what we were talking about anyways. No, Abel Trujillo versus Jamie Varner. It was a fantastic fight. Quite frankly, it was playing out just like I thought it would, although it was even better than I thought it would be. My initial thinking going into that fight was just that Varner, with his big show experience, he's got the wrestling background, former WEC champion, very underrated boxing. I said, you know what? I just had the feeling Varner was going to tune him up, and he was doing it, but he just got into this wild slugfest with him. He stopped fighting smart. Well, actually, I don't even think they got a chance to start fighting smart in that fight. But, you know, if Varner would have just pieced him up a little bit more, I think he could have avoided the shot and ended up getting the stoppage. But he was hanging in there. They were throwing fucking bombs. It was crazy. And, I mean, the right hook that Trujillo launched was just amazing. I like him a lot at lightweight. I think he's going to handle a lot of guys. He's got a unique skill set. Do I think there's better wrestlers? Yes. Do I think there's better strikers? Yes. But he combines them in a nice fashion. So I definitely like his prospects for the future.
Now I can jump in. Sorry about that. Again, Jake is messing around by swapping the order over. Trujillo. I wouldn't say Trujillo looked good because Varner was definitely taking control of the fight, and it seemed like he had him where he wanted him in the exchanges. Trujillo was normally ended up with his back against the fence and that sort of thing. But there is no doubt he hit him with that looping right hook, and Varner's eyes just went out. I don't think I've ever seen for a long time in the octagon. We haven't seen somebody throw a I guess you Americans call it a softball style right hand like that. Just completely balls to it, threw it, and it landed. And Varner just went out. That's going to send messages around the lightweight division that you've got to keep your guard up against this chin kid. Do not get into these slugging exchanges. That said, I want to see Sanchez versus Trujillo, man. That would be an insane fight. Yeah, let's book that fight.
Or Diego versus Abel, that would be definitely pretty nuts. Flyweight match, John Lineker between Ali Bagatinov And even before the fight, it started off a little testy. John Lineker, Dana White has said that John Lineker would be thought of for the flyweight title if he hadn't missed weight so much. Missed weight for his last 2 fights. He missed weight against Ali Bagatinov. On his first attempt, was given a chance to come back, weigh in again. The pictures were borderline disturbing, seeing Lineker's teammates moving his arms and legs for him. I really hope Lineker moves up to 135. And like Jay mentioned, either early in the show or before the show, that Ali did the UFC a favor beating him, because the UFC does not want to be thinking about John Lineker getting a title shot when he has such issues with cutting to 125 pounds. But alternatively, Ali Bagatinov, now he's inching closer and closer to a title fight, might just be a win away from a title fight. You know, this is the new stable of flyweights the UFC has brought in. How far is Ali Bagatinov from a title shot, Patrick?
I don't think he's far at all, Jake. I think he's there. I mean, he's 3-0 in the UFC's flyweight division. There's a lot of great prospects right now, but I think just to keep the division moving, it's basically time. I mean, who else are you going to set him up with that makes sense? Realistically speaking, anybody but Lineker is a step down, and I mean, like I said, there's a lot of great prospects at flyweight, but I'd really have to rack my brain to think of someone that would just make sense rankings wise. But regarding the fight, it was really a tale of 2 fights. If you watch the first round, you would think that there would be no way John Lineker had a chance in that fight. And if you would only watch the second round, you would think there's no way Bagatinov stood a chance in that fight, because Lineker was just blasting him all the way around. It was a good fight, but, you know, third round, Bagatinov, he found his rhythm again. It was just like the first round, fairly clean cut, 29-28. And, I mean, heck, I think at this point you pretty much have to put Puncher King up against Demetrius Johnson.
He did what he had to do. I mean, as you said, he did the UFC a favour. If Lineker had made weight, then we might have seen a different fight. But Lineker's been struggling with this, and he had to cut the extra pounds if he even wanted to be in that debate of title fight. Which in that fight he showed a lot of holes. I'm not saying Ali didn't, but Ali's done his 3-0. Stint now. I think it is about time. I can see why they'd maybe hold him back. I mean, you have got other guys. I mean, you've got Zach Makovsky, and you've got Josh Sampo, but both of those guys they've only really won 1 fight at this stage. So I think they're scheduled to fight each other. Maybe the winner of that fight goes on to fight for the title. For me right now, though, I absolutely love my Russian fighters, but that said, I think Demetrius Johnson, he's pretty much cleared the division out right now. McCall, Moraga, Benavidez, and Dodson. I think those guys are still all in the top, probably top 6, if not top 5. For that reason, I think we've got to see a super fight. Demetrius should really go up and maybe fight Faber. I can understand if he went up and fought McDonald, Faber, or Burrell. That's the fight I'm most interested in. I don't think there's a legitimate challenge for him.
I've got to disagree with all of you here. I think Ali Bagatinov, he deserves to be in talk of being in a title fight. He clearly won that fight against Lineker, and he did the UFC a favour, because Lineker's pissing around with this weight thing now too much. If he can't get down to that weight healthily, then he shouldn't be doing it. I didn't know about the pictures of him holding things up, but someone holding him up. But yeah, there's still a few guys. There's always guys coming through that. I mean, they've been saying phrases about people clearing out the division. There's always people going to come through, and you've got Sampo fighting, Fun Size. But I'll tell you who I think is going to be the next person to fight for the bantamweight title, and I'm surprised it hasn't been picked up already, especially by Jay. But the next one for me who's going to fight for the bantamweight title is Brad Pickett. He'll beat Ian McCall in London, and then it sets up him to fight against a champion who Brad Pickett has already beat before in the WEC. Pickett out-wrestled Demetrius Johnson in the WEC. So they've got a selling point there for that fight. You know, Demetrius Johnson defending a title against someone who's already beaten them. So I think that's what we'll see. I think we'll see Pickett beat McCall in probably a fight of the night in London. and then it will set up for a big European card, headlined by Pickett and Johnson. Honestly, that's what I honestly think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, Pickett definitely gets a big nod because he's defeated Mighty Mouse in the past, and moving down to flyweight. That'll be very interesting. I think one punch was a force to be reckoned with at 35. Now at 25, we'll definitely see. Moving on, a heavyweight match, the last match on the card that wasn't a title fight. Frank Mir and Alistair Overeem. Alistair Overeem beat Frank Mir up from pillar to post. I believe outstruck Mir something like 160-5. It was a very, 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 very one-sided match. But Dana White had criticism for Alistair Overeem afterwards for fighting such a safe game plan. He never really rushed in for the kill. Said afterwards that Reem said afterwards that Frank Mir, he had seen videos of his fights where he sort of pretends to be really rocked and falls on his back and someone swarms him, and Frank Mir uses that as a chance to sub him out via leg lock or whatever. So I really can't blame Alistair Overeem for having a safe game plan, especially with the knowledge that there is a decent chance that the loser of this fight was getting cut. I guess this week Zuffa is going to make the decision of whether or not to cut longtime UFC veteran Frank Mir. But do you side on Dana's side that Reem shouldn't have fought this boring fight, or do you sort of give him the benefit of the doubt, Jay?
We have never seen Frank Mir look as bad as he looked in that last fight, and you can attribute that to multiple things. You can say that it was Overeem who absolutely outpowered him, but I think Overeem did a job that we've wanted to see for a while, because Frank Mir, when he wins in any kind of fight, whether it be against Big Nog, whether it's against Crow Cop, whatever he does, when he wins, he's like, oh, I was always going to win it, and when he gets finished, he makes up a ton of excuses. In the Cormier fight, he is saying, oh, he just pushed me up against the fence and didn't do anything. In the Junior Dos Santos fight, I think he was complaining about an early stoppage. I think he also did that in the Carwin and Barnett fights. He always claims that there was something wrong. And in the Overeem fight, he was given a chance to stand. He was given a chance off his back. He was given a chance on top. And in every aspect, he looked absolutely pathetic. I mean, Overeem, when he finally lost, you could see Frank Mir. He had no way of looking cocky. I mean, when he did that arm bar on Big Nog, he started bowing and everything, claiming that he got dropped in that fight, but he still made it like, oh, I was always going to win anyway. In this fight, he was proven he's finally dominated in every single aspect, and I think that's a real chip in Frank Mir's shoulder. I mean, that's going to do more harm to him than any other knockout will ever do, because there's always a way that he's always found an excuse to make. As for Overeem, Overeem didn't look fantastic, as Dana White says, but he did everything he could have done. I mean, he could have stood him up earlier in that third round and gone for the knockout a little more, but I don't think I think he wanted to compose himself when he sent a message saying, the message was really to Frank Mir saying, he's fought top 5 guys, top 10 guys for the last 4 fights. He needs to step down in competition, because these guys can dominate him in whatever way they want.
It wasn't a great fight. I agree with Dana White. Reem didn't look great. Frank Mir took an absolute beating, and he was always in the fight. And I didn't think he looked that bad in the fight. I thought he hung on pretty well. I think I've seen him look worse in fights. Personally, I mean, he got completely annihilated by Shane Carwin, and we've seen him, be knocked out, of course, by Brock in one of the fights as well. But I thought he took a lot of punishment in that fight. I think the only one I know that he complained of an early stoppage that I know of was the Barnett one. Which he was going to lose the fight anyway. But yeah, Reem, I'm not into this fighting safe thing. I think Reem should have done more to get the finish. I understand where he was coming from, because of course he's gassed so hard. Frank Mir's done a lot for UFC, and if this is Frank Mir's time, then it is. But I hope they put him in the Hall of Fame, because he deserves to be. He's the longest running heavyweight in the UFC. I mean, he started fighting in the UFC 30s, I think it was. So he has been around the longest. And like they said on the commentary, he's broke 3 guys' arms, which is pretty mad, really. But yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised to see this as being Frank Mir's time. But I think whatever they do with Frank, they should make sure they put him in the Hall of Fame because of what he's achieved in the division, and he's hung around the longest, longer than anyone else in the heavyweight division.
I agree, Ray. He owns a ton of records in that heavyweight division. Patrick?
Well, quite frankly, I think the criticism that Overeem is getting for this fight is pretty much bullshit. Think about it like this. Bigfoot Silva, he was supposed to destroy Bigfoot Silva. Bigfoot Silva was supposed to be his walking target for him to knock out. Like, it was just the thing to do. I'm sure that's what everybody thought. Travis Brown, maybe not so much, but again, I'm sure pretty much every single person picked Overeem to come back and knock out Travis Brown. All these fights he was supposed to win. Frank Mir, that's a fight Overeem is supposed to win. He's supposed to win it all day long, but at the same time, they're talking about how Frank Mir has broken 3 dudes' arms. We've seen him put people to sleep with submissions. We've seen him put people unconscious with strikes. So Frank Mir is a very dangerous individual. Overeem did what he had to do to get the win. And as it was said, it was a dominating performance. He manhandled Frank Mir on the ground. The same dude who broke 3 people's arms, he completely outgrappled the way he had him gift wrapped with his arm put behind his head and the ground and pound he was putting down. How is that not impressive? I don't know what anybody's smoking these days, but no, I thought it was good. I mean, and Overeem, he barely even looked like he had a sweat after the fight. I thought that was pretty impressive too. So, hey, fair play to Overeem.
Word, yeah, I totally agree. Overeem dominated Mir. All right, let's get to the title fights before we send this one out. Jose Aldo and Ricardo Lamas. We sort of were talking about it, before the fight, that Jose Aldo he keeps fading out late in fights. Lamas was sitting on him during that 5th round. Actually, you know what? It was Ray who really was getting into it. So I will let Ray break it down. Ray, what next for Jose Aldo? I guess we're assuming he moves up to lightweight next. But what about this late fading in fights we've seen from him of recent?
It's not just of recent. It's been going on since he's been in the UFC. We've seen it against Edgar, Kenny Florian, Mark Hominick, and now, of course, Ricardo Lamas. I mean, the only time Aldo's really looked impressive was when he knocked out Chad Mendes in the UFC. Let's not forget his win over Korean Zombie. Korean Zombie dislocated his shoulder, and that's why he won the fight the way he did. That fight was just starting to get interesting. Aldo's is this prodigy. He's got so much potential, and he's obviously this amazing fighter. But for me, he doesn't deliver. He wins, but he does enough just to win. The thing that grabs my interest more, if he goes up to lightweight, then fair enough. We'll see how he is. Maybe like Patrick said as well, that might help with his cardio. If he fights Pettis personally, because of the way Pettis fights, I think Pettis will annihilate him. But that's just my opinion. But what I'm more interested to see what happens if he does go up to lightweight. Will Henan Brow vacate the bantamweight title, and will he move up to featherweight? Because that's one of the reasons Brow's not moved up to featherweight, because of his friendship with Aldo. And I'd love to see, because especially now that Brow seems to have cleaned out the bantamweight division, I'd love to see him go out and do the same in the featherweight, and then that would open up that bantamweight division a bit more. But again, that's just what I'd like to see.
I'm sorry. Now I'm the one who's thinking the order's messed up. I had no problems with this fight. I like Jose Aldo. Yeah, he has had the decisions, and he does have what seems to be a questionable gas tank going. The Frankie Edgar fight. We could say the last couple rounds, he didn't look so hot in that one. The Mark Hominick fight, this fight with Lamas. But heck, I felt he was going for it. He was throwing some solid combos, some like punch, leg kick, like 4-strike combos. He was chaining it together. He did have some good dominant positions on the ground against Lamas. I want to say he had back mount and had him in a bad way, and he was striking him up. I thought it was a good showing from Aldo. Yeah, the last couple minutes, I definitely thought that Lamas had it in him to put Aldo away, but he couldn't do it. Aldo was able to tie him up, and Yeah, I think it was a pretty good showing from Aldo. Undefeated in 8 years, that's what they were hyping up, and he delivered again against a very strong opponent.
Ray mentioned a second ago about Burrell, whether it'll go up or down. Burrell said in the post-fight speech that he will be staying at his weight class no matter what Aldo chooses to do. I don't know how I feel about Aldo. He's no doubt one of the top 6 pound for pound guys. And yeah, you're completely right. He fades in that 5th round, but he proves time and time again, even though he may fade, the other guy knows it. Hominick knows it. Lamas knows it. They can't do anything about it because he's won the other 4 before it. He looks fantastic. The first 3 rounds, he was kicking that leg in. Lamas couldn't do anything about it. And the only round it was even competitive was the 5th round, whereby Aldo still did a great job in the first 2 minutes of that fight, of that round. I don't know how his cardio will fare in lightweight, whether it is an issue of weight cutting, or whether it's just poor cardio at that camp. I think it might just be poor cardio because he never looks like an absolutely massive dude in my eyes. I'm not really the best weight cut judger in the world. But I think the Pettis-Aldo fight will be incredibly good. Aldo's a very technical fighter, whereas Pettis is very creative, and this is going to make it a very, very interesting fight.
It is, yeah. I was really looking forward to it the first time, and now that it's back on the table, I can't wait. Final fight we're going to break down, Renan Barão and Uriah Faber. Renan Barão winning the fight via stoppage. Only the 2nd stoppage on the card, but a lot of people were saying it was an early stoppage. I actually completely disagree. I think it was a good stoppage. Barão, I think I counted, landed between 15 and 20 strikes, and a lot of people were saying, oh, well, these strikes weren't punching him in the head, or, oh, well, Faber gave a thumbs up. Look, a thumbs up does not give you amnesty from having a fight stopped, and the fact of the matter is, Uriah Faber was, for all intents and purposes, motionless, while Barão was just hammering him. And not only that, but Dean gave Faber a warning after punch like 5 or 6, like, you gotta work, you gotta move, and he didn't move. So, to me, the only reason I don't think it was an early stoppage is because Faber was turtled up, not intelligently defending himself, which it shocked me. So many people on Twitter were trying to tell me that was intelligent defense. No, it was not. You were laying there with your hand over your head. Look, I am not a fighter. I'm not a referee. I'm not a judge. But I know enough that is not intelligent defense. And to those saying it wasn't an early stoppage, my question is very simple. How long would you have liked it to go on for? Because Dean let Barão land like 20 strikes. Like, what, would you rather Dean wait till Barão lands 30, 50, 100, just landing strikes until the end of the round? Because look, I get where people are coming from. Barão was not hurting Faber with those strikes. A, they didn't seem to be that vicious as far as the power behind them. B, they were hitting Faber in the arm and shoulder. So do I think the rules maybe could be tweaked a little bit? Sure. But the refs aren't going with common sense. The refs are going by the rules, and it's the referee's number one job to err on the side of fighter safety. I think Dean did a fine job reffing it, and I think the stoppage was fine. So let's talk about the stoppage, and if you have a good next opponent for Renan Barão, who do you think he fights next? It'll be interesting to see if Barão stays at bantamweight. If Jose Aldo moves up to 145, because he's said previously that the cut to 135 is hard for him, and he would move up to 45 if his friend and teammate Aldo moved up to 55. But now you have this interesting situation where Penn BJ Penn is training down with Barao and Aldo at Nova Uniao, and they've apparently turned into really good friends. So will Barao stay at 35 while Penn sniffs around the featherweights to maybe get a title shot there? It's all very interesting. What did you think about the fight? What did you think about the stoppage? What do you think about the future of Renan Barao? Sweet Pappy Jones, I'll lead it off with you.
Fellas, I will sum it up like this. Uriah Faber was on a fucking tear coming into this fight. This was one title fight where certainly no one could gripe about it being undeserved. He rattled off 4 wins very quickly in a matter of months, not even a year, in very impressive fashion. He came into this fight against Barao, yes, on 3.5 weeks' notice, but he looked so much improved in his other fights. He previously fought Renan Barao to a 25-minute unanimous decision, comes in arguably the best looking of his career, and Renan Barao finishes him in less than a round. So how much better is Barao getting? I mean, say what you want to about the stoppage. I completely agree with you, Jake. If the shots are hitting him in the arm or the shoulder, then why the fuck isn't he sprawling? Why isn't he trying to take out Barao's knee? Why isn't he trying to do anything if it's not hitting him? It's because he was still basically unconscious. So, good stoppage, amazing fight. Who's next for Barao? I think the general consensus is a Sunsao. If not, Dillashaw could potentially weasel his way in there. Who knows? But Barao's a beast no matter where he's at. So I just can't wait to see what he's doing next.
I thought it was Jay next.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
You're right.
Everybody's making this mistake.
You're both
Jake.
from the UK. You're the same person.
There's reasons why it should have been stopped, and there's reasons why it shouldn't have been stopped. I mean, external reasons. I mean, you've got Faber's age, the fact it's a championship fight, and then you've got the other reasons, such as this invisible thumb up that only seemed to go up. It went up the second that Renan Barao started looking at the referee. When a fight is looking at the referee, it does put. It puts Herb Dean in a hell of a situation. I mean, he's probably looking at Renan. He's looking at Renan hitting Faber. He's not looking for a thumb up. Like, he wants to see movement. The letter of the law is intelligently defending himself. He has got a hand there, so I guess that'll be another reason why it shouldn't be stopped. And and that's kind of it for that. As opposed to the reasons why it should be stopped, he got dropped twice. Moments before the finish, he had face planted to the canvas. I mean, Herb Dean you've got to really start working for position if you're trying to prove you're still okay. Renan's looking directly at you as a referee, as I've already said. You're making no attempt to move. You're just blocking it. And again, going by the letter of the law, the referee should stop the fight. I can't remember the exact rules. If you are unintelligently defending yourself, it doesn't specify what body part. Are you intelligently defending your left hand? No, he is hammer fisting away at it. By the letter of the law, there is a body part that you are leaving exposed that is getting hit 20 to I can't even tell you how many times, but you're defending your head, but you're not defending your hand. If you move the position, then you could be intelligently defending yourself because you're working to get out of the position. But by the letter of the law, you are not defending your hand. You have been dropped twice. You have face planted. The referee in that position has got to stop it. Renan Barao's a beast. What's next for him? I don't have a clue. As I said before, I could see that super fight being made, but a Sunsao probably is the most deserving contender at this stage.
I thought it was a premature stoppage because you're on about intelligently defending himself, but you've got to be causing damage for that defense to be needed, and he wasn't causing damage. I think Barao was going to win the fight. He had dropped him before, but for me, the telltale sign is when the fight finishes, Faber gets straight to his feet. So if Faber's straight to his feet, that means he wasn't dazed, he wasn't hurt. You've got to look at each fighter on an individual basis. You've got one guy in Tough China who taps when he gets full mounted because he hasn't got the capacity to take the punches. You've got somebody like Faber who's at the top end of the sport. He knows he can take some of those punches, and he needs to move, and I get that, but he wasn't in danger. He was being hit in a spot which wasn't causing him any damage, and he was still fine to continue. That's why I think it was a bad stoppage. I still think Brow would have won. For next for Brow, it's very hard to say because he has, the top contenders in that division were Faber, Pickett, McDonald. We had McDonald beat Pickett. Of course, Pickett's now dropped down. We had Faber beat McDonald, and now, of course, Faber's been and fought Brow and lost. And I don't really think that the way that fight ended, I don't really think we're all looking for an instant rematch because of what happened prior to the stoppage. So I don't know who's next, but whoever's next, I expect Brow to do more the same because he is, Brow is that good. That's why I'd have him higher up on the pound to pound rankings, especially over Aldo, who does enough to just scrape and win. But yeah, I was impressed with Barao. I didn't agree with the stoppage, but I was still impressed with Barao.
Yeah, Renan Barao and Jose Aldo, the only two non-American champions. We had a chance on Saturday to bring all the belts back to the United States, but Jose Aldo and Renan Barao are two monsters. We really thank you for tuning in to the MMA Roundtable. Also, we really thank Ray for staying a little bit past midnight to break down the fights. Speaking of Ray, you have any shout-outs you want to give to the kind people who listen to this show?
Just, I'm gonna have to go because I've got to go to bed and I've got to get up at 5:30. I've got to get up in 5 hours to go and do another 6-mile run. But yeah, follow me on Twitter at MMA Mental. That's it. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Ray, and we will talk to you on another day. I will drop you off the call. We love the shit out of you. Jay Jeans, any plugs you want to shout out? Follow him on Twitter at TheJayJeans, TheJayJeans. That's right, his last name is just like the pants. Jay, what's up?
Man, thanks for giving my new Twitter handle a shout out. I don't think I've got any plugs this week. Got a few bath plugs downstairs, but whatever. We'll go with it. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, guys. It's been a good one. I've had a few rants, and I'm sorry about that.
It's all good. We love the shit out of you. P Money, where do we find you on the Twitters? What the hell's going on?
Well, you can find me at Sweet Pat Jones, Twitter, Instagram. Your boy, follow and the whole.
You're cutting out. You're cutting out a little there, but I think we heard the best of it. Follow your boy, Sweet Pappy Jones. We'll be coming back at you tonight for the Word on the Street podcast with your boy Ramses. Follow him at the Aunt Jimmy Show. And then we've moved the MMA podcast from Monday night to Wednesday night, so check that out tomorrow night. We love the shit out of all of you beautiful cocksuckers, and we will see you either next Tuesday or the Tuesday after if we ain't got that much to talk about on the roundtable. I love you personally in a very tender, romantic, personal way. I watch you go to sleep every night outside your bedroom window. Thank you. We'll see you next week. We gone.